Okay, I'm going to do a screen share and should bring up my PowerPoint. There we go. All right. I'm going to minimize my window here. There we go. All right. I take it the screen is working for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I need. You can see that right away the stylized shell as part of the logo for the Camino is it's just part of what it is, and the yellow color especially is very important because that's the color of the arrows that you follow all the way across Spain. So let's get started. The Camino has been an active pilgrimage route in northern Spain since the 8th century, which is something remarkable in and of itself. And when you're walking on the Camino, you're walking where literally hundreds of thousands, I guess probably more like millions of people now have walked for 1,200 years. There's something about that alone, which is you're stepping into something much bigger than yourself. It almost died out in the 80s, but around 300,000 people now walk some part of it every year. So it has had a huge revival, which I think is very interesting. That there's something about the spirituality, the adventure, something about it is appealing to many, many, many people. And they come from all over the world. And I met pilgrims from all of these places. Just take a moment to scan some of the countries. And these are all people I had actual conversations with. The Netherlands was one gentleman I met the second day when we were going up a long, long, long mountain. And, and I'm not an athlete, and I was just really struggling, but he was, just plodding along step by step, and he was about as old as I, maybe a tad older. And he just said, you just got to put one step ahead of the other and keep going. And he was right. I slowed down, started putting just one step ahead of the other, and got up those mountains. But also from the USA. And these are the states that of people I met along the way. And that's part of the charm of the Camino. It is truly an international experience. So what is a pilgrimage? And this is a Wikipedia definition, but it's a pretty good one. A pilgrimage is a journey into an unknown or foreign place where, through the experience, a person goes in search of a new or expanded meaning about the self, others, nature, or a higher good. It can lead to a personal transformation, after which the pilgrim returns to daily life. And I would only add one other note following that, after which the pilgrim returns to daily life and continues the transformation. There's a saying that says, your pilgrimage begins when you arrive in Santiago. Not when you finish, but when you arrive. And I have found that to be a true thing. So why do people do it? And these are some of the motivations I picked up in conversations with folks. Some are religious, others spiritual, some psychological or emotional. And there are a number of people working out stuff along the way that it might have been a marriage that has gone bad, or a death that has occurred and they're sorting out the grief. I remember one person when we started out, he had to get to Santiago by November 3rd, November 3rd. And why? Well, it's because that was the anniversary of his wife's death the year before. And it meant so much to him to arrive in Santiago at that point. It was part of his grieving process. I thought that was very touching. Could also be cultural, just stepping into another culture. Spanish is spoken in Spain, and you're in a whole nother world when you do that. Historical, Spain goes way back, pre-Roman stuff. I mean, it's ancient. Recreational, just for the fresh air and the walk. The adventure, something new. Tourism, there are plenty of things to see along the way, and lots of guidebooks to take you to those places. The Camino is not one path. We might think of it as like the Appalachian Trail. It's one path. It's not. It's a network of trails. And I mean a network all over Europe and all over Spain. And you'll see in a map in a couple of minutes where all of these different trails kind of blend into one when you finally get to Santiago itself. Most pilgrims travel by foot, though some ride bicycles or horses. Now, here's a visual of the trails. The heavy red one across the top, that is the traditional route. That's the Camino Francaise, the French way. And it starts in France, in the little town of Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. But you can see that there's a network of trails feeding in from France. And indeed, if you see a larger vision, you'll see them from Germany and Italy and other places. So they all kind of feed into. And then there are several Spanish-oriented, originated trails, like over in Barcelona and Madrid. And then you even have a Portuguese way. But they all wind up eventually going into Santiago de Compostela in the northwest of Spain. Yeah, the Camino begins in many places. Actually, the truth is, it starts when you step out your front door to get going on it. It terminates in the city of Camino de Santiago, the traditional burial place of St. James the Apostle. This is St. James, as in Peter and Andrew, John and James, the sons of Zebedee. So this is James, the son of Zebedee, and it's James and Peter and John who are the key apostles, who are the ones who tend to be with Jesus in all of the critical moments of his ministry. So they're the ones who are there at the transfiguration scene, and they were there, of course, at the Last Supper, and in many places. These are the three who tend to be key to the disciple circle. Although it was James and John who argued over who was going to be greatest in the kingdom of God, and they even had their mama advocating them for positions in Jesus' high council. They totally misread what Jesus was about. So James went on to become a remarkable figure in Christian history, but like all the disciples, he was far from perfect. He was the first of the disciples to be martyred, though. His death is recorded in the book of Acts. There's the cathedral with a huge plaza outside. And this is the crypt where St. James is buried. It's underneath the altar of the church. And it's a lovely spot. There are flowers there, and it's just a very quiet and peaceful location. And these supposedly holds the remains of James and two of his disciples. Well, the Camino Francaise is the route that I walked, and it's the traditional one, and it's the one that was featured in the film by Martin Sheen. It's about 481 miles in length, which is about the distance from Kilmarnock to Buffalo. And most people walk it in about 36 to 40 days. It took me 42 days. And there's another picture of it. So just follow those green dots across the top, and that'll get you to Santiago. It begins on September 25th, 2019. I'm at Dulles Airport waiting for my flight. And my wife said, as she left, she left me at the airport and then called me on the phone in about 20 minutes and said, be sure to take a picture of yourself. And I said, okay, I'll do that. And I thought she was saying, don't forget to take a picture of yourself to mark the start of your trip. No, that's not why she wanted a picture of myself. She wanted it so she could send it, I'm not kidding, to Interpol, so that in case I wound up missing, they'd at least have a photograph of me to work with. She never told me that until I got home. But if you read my face, I really was kind of scared at that point. I had no idea how this thing was going to turn out. I'd never walked that far in my life. I'd never gone off another country on my own before. It was just, I was kind of scared. So what was I thinking? A couple of shots from getting there. This is the train station at Charles de Gaulle Airport. And I just thought it was just fascinating lines, and design in it. It's just an interesting kind of structure. Train stations are so often, there they are, tracks and a building, and that's it. This seemed to have some style to it. And this is Bayonne, which is the next stop is Saint Jean Pied de Port. And I was waiting for the train to come in to take us there. And then I noticed across the track platform, all these backpacks. And I thought, I know where they're going. Because that was a signal of a pilgrim, a sign of a pilgrim. And this is Saint Jean, and the walking begins. And we walk. And we walk. Not everyone walks. This young man on the bicycle was pedaling his way from Germany, and he was going to go all the way around around Spain and then back to Germany. It's going to take about 3,000 miles to do all that. And nice guy. And the walker on the right. This came when I was at one part of the journey where I came across a family from Bulgaria, and it was grandma, grandpa, daughter, and child, about 3 years old in the walker. Now they weren't walking the whole Camino; they were just doing a section of it, but it was their vacation, and so she had gotten an off-road type, heavy-duty walker for the child, and I thought, pretty cool. She got to ride on the Camino. So it's kind of the Camino is for all kinds of folks, all kinds of ages, and some are younger, some are older, but it's just a variety of people. It's not a thin slice of humanity. It's a very, very broad swath. Well, the Camino is not one road. It is not one path. Like I said, the AT, the Appalachian Trail, is a single path, but the Camino is a chain of woodland paths, city streets, country lanes, logging roads, recreational trails, town parks.
Nancy, I got it.
Pardon? No. Okay. How do you know where to go? You learn to follow the arrows or the emblems. And so it might be a pedestal like the one on the left, or it might be emblems embedded in the walkways, in the stone paths, of which there are many in Spain. All towns and cities have these stone streets and stone sidewalks, and you might see these emblems embedded there. So you just look around when you come to an intersection to find the emblem, and you follow from there. A lot of times it's that yellow painted arrow. This is the one on a utility box. And the one on the right I always like is kind of an imaginative marker with the shepherd's crook and the hand pointing the way you should go. And this is somebody arranged flower petals on the path at one point and just put an arrow in there. It didn't last long, but I caught it when it was still fresh and new. Sometimes it's a statue, and sometimes it's that stylized seashell emblem. Along the way, there are hotels, hostels, B&Bs to spend the night. Most pilgrims prefer the low-cost dormitory-style albergues. For $8 to $15 a night, you get a bed, Wi-Fi, laundry facilities, a shared bathroom, and kitchen usage. This is where I spent my first night, and it was crossing the Pyrenees. Right away, you leave Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port and you're going up and over the Pyrenees mountains. And there's that laundry I was telling you about. Everybody, you wash it by hand, basically. And everybody does their laundry every day, it seems. And so this is a drying out back. But you can sort of look beyond the clothesline. And you can get a feeling for the height where we are. I mean, this is really mountain stuff here. Only went about 8 or 9 miles that day. I thought I would die. Boy, it was a lot of uphill. You learn after a while that all shoes and poles are left in a separate place. And I learned the discipline. I had to ask at some point in the midpoint. I asked one of the albergue hosts, why do we do that? And and he said, can't you smell them? Oh yeah, right. Common courtesy. Most albergues utilize bunk beds, but some of these had cool pods where you had curtains and Wi-Fi and electrical setting outlets and all that to recharge your cell phone. Very nice. And finding something to eat is not hard. There are grocery stores all along the way. There are cafes, bars, restaurants. That's the young man on the bicycle. I caught up to him a couple of days later, and we were sitting in the same bar. And so I thought, well, it'd be a nice shot to show what a bar looks like. The bars in America tend to be watering holes. I mean, you go to a bar because you're going to drink. Bars in Spain are more of gathering spots. They have alcohol, but they also have soft drinks. They have food. They might have a couple of recreational games in the back, pool or things like that. But people just hang out there. I mean, families hang out in the bars. So, oh my. You'll have to wait for a second. I realize my computer is running low on energy. So let me go get my charger cable, and I'll be right back.
Okay, while he's getting his charger, remember, if you have any questions, just type it up in the chat, direct it to me, and then I'll stop him and say, Judy has a question or Winona has a question. Glad you were able to finally get through it to us, Judy. Is Nancy Cochette watching with you or listening? I've got you muted. I've got everybody muted. Okay, I guess that's a no. It's kind of cool being able to see some of the stuff that Sven talked about, to actually get to see the pictures.
I'm back.
Great.
Yay. One of the standard, absolutely standard nectars of the Camino is called café con leche, which is basically coffee with milk. And the style of coffee over there is the European style, which everything is espresso. That's the preparation method. And so they do variants on the espresso, and this is great. Not a very big cup, but gosh, it was satisfying. Make no mistake, the miles of walking do take their toll. They bring on aches, pains, blisters, and weariness, and everybody gets funky now and then. That is for sure. It is a stress on the body, but, and this is where I just have such high regard for the Camino. There are lots of energizers along the way to kind of buoy your spirits and to keep you going for another few miles. The one on the left, we did an underpass, and there was, graffiti of all kinds in the underpass, like underpasses everywhere in the world. But there's this one little one over on the side that said 616 kilometers to Santiago Buen Camino. And that was so nice to see that, because you're tired, and it was at the end of the day. We were sore, we were weary, we were hungry. And to see that little bit of encouragement, keep it going, was really nice. The rose on the right is a rose that has been bred especially for the Camino. And I forgot what the name of it is, but it's like the Camino rose or something like that. But it's bred in honor of the Camino itself. In the middle of nowhere, it was in vineyard country, going down a gravel path in the back 40 of Spain. I looked down and I saw the stone that somebody had written on it: "Sing a song now," which cool. And then then the picture on the right was a mural, and murals are big in Spain. This is a mural that somebody had drawn of the typical pilgrim who's just carrying way too much stuff, and the one thing you can think about is like chilling out, and there he is sitting in a chair, just feeling like, yes, no weight, no walking, just relaxing. That's how you feel sometimes after a long day. And then there was like metal statuary. And then there's another stone that was on a barrier. I was walking on the left side of that barrier, and there's a fairly major road on the right. Somebody drawn with an ink pen, that happy face. It's just kind of a neat thing to see that as you're going uphill, and it was uphill too, or a long uphill walk. Oh, this is a busker we ran across who pulled out his guitar and said in very broken English, "Where are you from?" And we said, "America." And so he launched into a ditty that incorporated Americano at several points. And this is a video, so and it goes for about 30 seconds.
Tom, we're not getting any sound.
Oh, no, you're not. You're right. Let's see if I can. That's right. I have to give you a sharing of sound. I'll have to start. I have to start over. Well, actually, what happened was by the end of the song, every time he twirled his guitar, he said Americano. So it was pretty cool. I'm pretty sure he just, whatever nationality he ran across, German or Japanese or whatever, he would insert the country's name in it. But it was really fun. It was just a fun moment to have him do that. Okay. And along the way too was a real upper. We're meeting some people like this couple who ran one of the albergues. Their name was Sabine and Uli, and they were a German couple who had retired and purchased a defunct albergue, and they were just wonderful hosts. They just really embodied the spirit of what the Camino was about. They welcomed us, and they made the meal for us. And there are about 5 or 6 of us in that meal. We had 2 Spaniards who could speak nothing but Spanish. We had a German who could speak nothing but German. And we had Uli and Sabine, who had a facility with all 3 languages, namely English, because my friend and I were Americans and we could only speak English. And somehow they created a community in that meal. It was remarkable. They made us feel at home. They made us feel together. It was just a very, very warm and enjoyable spirit. Most of the time staying in the hostels and all of that, it was, it's like going to a motel. You pay your money and you get your bed and you do your thing and then leave the next day. But these folks really created a home for us for about 24 hours. It was very sweet. Here's another one. This is Carlos, who knew no English and I knew no Basque. And he was from the northern part of Spain in the Basque region. But we stumbled across each other at one bar along the way. And so I bought him a beer, and then he turned around and paid for my second Coke. And we discovered that we could communicate through the universal language of goodwill and courtesy. I tell you, we could not understand each other, but we could point to pictures on our cell phones and that sort of thing, pictures of home, and that helped. But buying a drink for each other seems to be transcends any particular culture, and it was really nice. And then for me, one thing I had not expected to do on the Camino was to find a new friend. I mean, I expected to meet lots of people and have friendly conversations, but I didn't think I'd ever find a friend. But I did. This is Sean, and we met the first day, and we both silently agreed to ourselves that we wanted to ditch the other guy as soon as we could because we were very opposite. One might describe it as I was a retired preacher who believed in the dignity of good conversational language. And he was a retired Marine who didn't. His language level was pretty, Marine-like. And I thought, man, I don't need to hear this stuff. And he somehow figured I was probably a goody two-shoes. He didn't like me. And so we avoided each other as much as we could. But after a couple of days, we realized we moved at the very same pace. We always wound up at the same place at the same time. And so we started to get to know each other. And as it turned out, we discovered something a whole lot more meaningful about each other than we saw. And we've become good friends, and we stay in touch and communicate every now and then about what's happening in our lives. And it's just been very satisfying. And I'll be glad to talk more about that too if you all have questions. But the Camino has a way of doing that. This was another part of the trip that I really appreciated. It's called the Cross of Iron, or the Cruz de Ferro. It's about if you're going that northern route, it's about 3/4 of the way there to Santiago. And it is a very plain looking cross. You see it from the side here. I don't have an actual frontal view of it, but you see the cross up top, and it's on this ugly old telephone pole. I mean, it is unattractive, very unattractive. And at the base of that cross is literally a pile of artifacts that's 15 feet high. And this is where pilgrims for hundreds of years have deposited things that are of meaning to them. Mostly stones, but there are photographs and baby shoes and necklaces and other kinds of things that that people left there that was important to them, very symbolic for them. And the pile is 15 feet high. It's huge. It's a mound. And these are two of the objects I brought. I carried these all the way from Kilmarnock in my backpack, and I left them there at the foot of the cross, and I was special. And these are reminiscent. These are in memory or in honor of people who have been very, very important in my life. And it was just so meaningful to be able to take that moment and sort of place them there and know that they're going to be there forever. Well, as a Presbyterian, I'm not used to that kind of a spirituality, but that was a nice expansion of my thoughts and feelings. Here's a high point. This is on the outside of Pamplona, and this is part of a series of metal sculptures that are devoted to the pilgrims and the pilgrimage itself. And another one, 100 kilometers to go. And the big one, Santiago. We made it. There is a lot that you see. Villages and cities, churches, ruins, including a Roman road, flowers, trees, shrubs, animal life. Lots of cats. Cats are outdoor animals there, and they're everywhere. Vineyards and farms, gardens, sculptures, murals, public water fountains. Every little town had its own public water fountain that you could use. Endless patterns of stonework. My gosh. Shrines, mountains, valleys, rivers. Lots to see.
Tom?
Yeah.
What was your preparation for that kind of walking?
I have been doing some hiking ahead of time. I mean, I'd started taking up hiking about 10 years ago, long distance hiking. I had never gone, more than, 15 or 16 miles in a day, maybe 17. So I did some training ahead of time to get used to walking long distances, but not nearly the amount I probably should have had. And a lot of people show up on the Camino having not done anything at all. And what happens is that regardless of whether you're totally in shape or not, there's about a week or so of adjustment as your body gets used to a daily kind of long distance walking. And after about a week or a week and a half, you sort of are into it. The body adjusts.
Yeah. Well, we have a question here. How much money did you take while on the walk?
I probably had about $400, $500 in my pocket. It is a cash economy. At least the Camino is. Plastic doesn't really work very well. Most merchants don't do the credit card thing, but there are ATMs all along the way. Everywhere you go, there are ATMs, so you can get money from the ATMs. So I usually have about 300 or 400 in my pocket at any one time, and I think probably I spent upwards of maybe $1,000, on the road itself. That's not including the plane tickets and all that sort of thing, but $1,000 with the housing and the food.
So how long did it take? I don't know if I heard that. And how many pairs of shoes did you take?
I just took one pair of shoes. It took me technically 40 days to get there. We laid out for 2 days because my friend Sean had a very bad cut in his foot. And this was early on in the trip, and he had to lay over a week in order for the healing to take place. So I waited a couple of days while he sorted that out. So it took me about 40 days to do the actual walk. Okay, any other questions?
What are a couple of things that you might have done differently or you would do differently if you did it again?
That's a good question. I think I'm kind of happy the way I did it. I think probably what I would do maybe differently is to spend more time in conversation with people and worry less about covering X amount of miles per day. I was sort of feeling like I had to keep walking because that's my nature. But I mean, I budgeted 50 days for this experience, so I didn't have to be walking every single day. And in fact, at the end, I spent a lot of time touring Santiago and its surroundings because I had about 8 or 9 days extra. But I would spend more time in conversation with people, and yes, I would spend more time in conversation, and less time, pounding the pavement to get to the next hostel by 1 o'clock or so. So,
yeah. So what was your normal length of day of walking?
About 13 miles, and we would cover it generally in 5 hours or so, 5 or 6 hours.
Okay. Do you want to take down your screen so we can see everybody?
Could. I'm not quite there yet.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'll wait then.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of more questions. One is, when these kind of go together, how did you know what to pack and how much did your backpack weigh?
There is all kinds of advice on what to pack. The Camino is a very lively subject in the blog sphere. There are websites devoted to it. There are several organizations of pilgrims who share information. And just go ahead, Google, say, what should I pack for the Camino de Santiago? And bing, 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 you'll get all kinds of advice on that. So there's a lot of collective wisdom out there. What was the second?
How much did it weigh once you got it all in there?
Yeah. The recommendation is no more than 20 pounds on your back. I had 30 pounds. I had a couple of things in there that were weighty, and one of those I might have left at home. But yeah, 30 pounds is a bit much, but 20 pounds is recommended. And a lot of folks, they set it up so that their luggage and all that would be transported not on their back, but by shuttle service. And so they would have their stuff shuttled to their next stopping point. And so all they had to take was like water, and that's about all they needed to take for their day hiking.
Okay. So once you got to Santiago, what did you do?
They have it's a town that has a lot of different things to see. There was a museum for pilgrims. I went there. Touring the cathedral was another thing. Um, there were several sights to see along the way in Santiago. It's a functioning town, but it has a lot of history to it. So there are different places I could visit there. And then also I took a day trip to the coast. And again in the movie The Way, once they got to Santiago, then they took that extra trip over to the coast, to Finisterre, it's called, and Musha. There's two sites on the coast that are also ancient pilgrimage type sites. And I took a day trip where we saw both those. It was with a tour in the area, where it was our tour guide was versed in English and in Spanish. And so she translated for me whenever we got to places where she wanted to point out things. And she would do her whole spiel in Spanish first to the rest of the people on the bus. And then for me, she would switch over to English and describe what we were looking at.
This is kind of from a totally different direction. It said, since your wife had you take the ID picture, what anxieties did she share with you before you left and when you returned?
Well, she was afraid I was going to die. I was going to keel over and have some kind of terrible thing happen to me. I'm not sure she's afraid I was going to be lost as much as kidnapped. She just had all kinds of the fears that we all have when we have a loved one go off on her or his own, and so she's a little worried. But none of those things happened. It was a very safe kind of experience. In fact, one measure of safety was how many single women walked the Camino. And there were gobs, all kinds of women walking on their own on the Camino, all ages. And to me, that was a real signal about the security that people sensed. And I saw nothing bad happen at all during the entire Camino. And that's the story that people have again and again. Yes, every now and then there is something unpleasant that happens. And, because that's the world we live in. But it's far more dangerous for me to walk in Kilmarnock, I think, than it was for me to walk 500 miles on the Camino de Santiago. There is a security system built in culturally, that it is a safe kind of experience. And the people of the Camino, the citizens who live along the way, they understand what the Camino is, and they're very open to pilgrims and helping pilgrims when they do have their troubles. I got lost a couple times, and I would come across someone who realized I was lost, and even though speaking English was not their thing, we figured out by sign language and everything else that I had gone the wrong way, and they were helping me get back on the right path. That's the spirit of that whole culture. Yeah.
That's quite a theological statement in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is.
One of the questions is, did you touch the statue of St. James, and why was or wasn't that an importance for you?
All right. Well, somebody understood. Yeah. Another part of the experience of the cathedral is right up there, beneath the cross, somewhere up there in the chancel area, there's a statue of St. James, slightly larger than life. And part of the tradition is to go up into that area. It's deep in the chancel of the sanctuary. So, you look out, you see the whole cathedral from there, the whole sanctuary area, including the altar and the pulpit and the lectern and all that. You see all that from there. And the idea is that you can touch the statue or hug it or kiss it, but that helps people to sort of, get in touch again with the experience or the not the experience, but the presence of the apostle James. And that does have a way of sort of like foreshortening the distance between us and the biblical world. It's what 2,000 years now since James walked upon the earth, and somehow having an experience like that foreshortens that distance. It's almost like a time warp, and you're getting in touch with a living history. Now, whether James is actually buried there, whether those are his bones, who knows, but the idea is the memory of James is kept alive in that place. And James was historical. And so just touching emblems of James, like that statue, just transports you back into, or it makes it more of an immediate experience. And it was kind of neat. I like that.
Okay. Well, I don't have any questions up right now, Sid, if you want to continue with your...
Yeah, I think I'm almost done, actually. Yeah, I could not understand why some people go back and walk multiple Caminos. I thought, oh man, one's enough, isn't it? But once I finished it, I realized that there is something magical about the pilgrimage. It does renew us, and it even changes us for the better. How we feel about ourselves in the world in which we live. And I think that is my last slide. Yeah, Buen Camino. Okay. All right.
That's terrific, Tom. Does anyone want to directly speak to Tom now that he doesn't have to pay attention to his slides? I noticed that we have one group from our church at the church building. They're waving at us. On the right is Sven. There's Sven Van Bars. He's our rector. Judy Dobson, and I guess that's probably Nancy Cachette hiding on the couch. Sven has done some of this. So Sven, you want to say something about your experience or speak to your fellow pilgrim?
It's always good to hear another pilgrim's experience, and I would agree with Tom's assessment that the Camino was a very safe place. On my second Camino, which was walking from Santiago de Finisterre that Jen and I did, we witnessed a group that a woman had left behind her purse at a restaurant, and we saw a guy walking past us with the purse on the back of his backpack hanging outside so that everybody could see it. So we witnessed the purse being reunited. What had happened was they had left the restaurant the day before, she realized she forgot the purse. This guy said, well, I'm going that direction. I heard them talking about that, put the purse on the back of his pack, walked, and then he saw them and they got it back and everything was in there, like $600 in cash and jewelry and everything. And it was all just there. There's just this community that grows up, and you see people repeatedly, and you have conversations, and it becomes just a wonderful international community, which language is secondary to the experience.
They actually have a phrase called Camino family, and just by the nature of walking, and like Sean and myself, we were forced to be a family before we decided we would be a family. But you do tend to walk at a certain pace, and you tend to see the same people for some time, and you tend to wind up in the same place, and so you have supper together, and you get to know each other, and it's just kind of a wonderful experience. And then the flow of life is such that you'll break up again, and probably you never see them again, or you might, you never know. But there is that family aspect. There is this creation of a small communities along the way.
Natalie?
Yeah. So here I go with the environmental stuff. So Sven or Tom, did you get a sense that there, a lot of places where people we've been walking, like in kind of in Israel, whatever, they've had to, I guess, put limitations on access. Do you see a sense of that going on the pilgrimage to Santiago, or should there be, or what's your thoughts on, in order so that it doesn't get destroyed?
Natalie, you talk about access and are you thinking about folks who have handicaps who are wheelchair bound?
Well, no, that's a good question. Actually, I could ask about that, but I'm just wondering about the fact that so many feet have and continue to walk that path, go that, be there, what that does to the environment, to the, yeah. But I actually, the disability question is one I'd like to tag on afterwards.
Okay. Well, what I saw, and Sven can certainly jump in and share his thoughts. There were some spots where you could see erosion happening, and really did call out for some care, tender, loving care. A lot of spots are cared for, and in fact, reinforced by stone. Stonework is everywhere. It's unbelievable. I mean, we don't know much about stonework in this country. We don't, because when you see what they do over there with stone, it's just everywhere. And so some of the places that have been worn, they haven't put in stoneways to help retard, the kind of erosion that's happening. There were a few woodland areas and all that where, like the AT, they were well worn and they did cry out for some care. And I'm sure they do get care along the way, but there are some more fragile spots. But a lot of the Caminos also on sort of gravel paths that run by highways. So there's not a problem there with environmental problems.
Tom, I have a question here. It says, how has this pilgrimage transformed you?
That's a good question. That I referred earlier to the, two answers. One is, I cannot share how meaningful it was to make a friend along the way. I'm a profound introvert. I tend to live off my own resources. I don't expect to make friends. I expect to meet lots of people and have friendly conversations, but I don't expect to actually, find people that I really connect with in a deep way. And they say this Camino is going to surprise you, that you go looking for certain things. I had certain things I had in mind that I wanted to discover and learn about. And they happened. They did. The Camino provides, but the Camino will also surprise you and take you to places you did not expect to go, and you'll discover things that you just didn't know were there. And this Sean was a gift. He turns out he's a stand-up comic. He has that personality, and he has such funny ways of taking ordinary events and just spins it so you just have to laugh. And the first thing we did for about the first 20 days of our Camino is we got into a riff by saying, and here's all the things about the Camino the guidebooks did not tell you. They presented all the wonderful things, and here we said, you might have problems finding a place to sleep, or they didn't tell you about how high the mountains were, that sort of thing. We had a lot of fun just teasing the Camino and our expectations about that. So that was a real gift, and I hadn't expected it. But we see what that did was that opened me up again to the idea of learning about people in a new way. And one of my journeys has been learning how to listen. Just listen. And the Camino started me thinking along those lines in a big way. And in the last year or two, I have done a lot of work here in our community on race relations and interracial conversations. And that Camino dynamic of learning to listen to folks who are different than you is so important for building community and trust. And that's a seed that's bearing fruit big time in the work I'm doing with interracial relationships here in the area. The other thing is that idea that the Camino starts when you get to Santiago. I'd heard that, but it's true that I found myself actually in a pattern now of every 50 days, I'm starting a new Camino. I'm up to Camino 14 now. And I set certain goals about spiritual development and things I would like to see happen. And I work on that for the next 50 days while I'm going through this new Camino. And I've had several, it's been a discipline, so to speak, a spiritual discipline doing that. It's been helpful for developing some more parts of my own spirituality.
Winona, you had a question?
I do have a question. Good morning, Tom. Thank you for being here and making your presentation. I really appreciate it. I do have a question for you. I want to preface it with something. I met my husband in Torrejon, Spain, in one of the bars that you were talking about that are family destinations. And young couples would bring their children in their strollers, and the children would have churros and chocolate, and the adults would have tapas and tinto. And so I met my husband on an Air Force base that I would not have had that opportunity if they hadn't decided that those meeting places, those gathering places were a healthy addition to that environment at the time in the 1980s. And so I'm just prefacing what I want to ask you with that because it's kind of sentimental to me. My husband and I made it. We did not go on the Camino de Santiago. We did go up to Bilbao and Santander and see the signs that were pointing the direction for the pilgrimage.
Yeah.
And my question to you this morning is about how being a spiritual being and having a human experience on this pilgrimage is similar in connecting us to each other, whether we are women discussing women's spirituality, or if we are of one faith or one color or one, like what we're talking about is how we are connected, and it's something that I'm passionate about. So can you say something to me about that unites us, that experience that you had, not just on the pilgrimage, but in your life, helping people on their spiritual paths? Thank you.
I think the genius of the Camino is not that it is somehow, a unique, one of a kind, you'll never find it anywhere else kind of experience. It's more that the pilgrimage itself has a tradition around it, and it takes the basics of what it takes to have that kind of connectivity with people, which is to strip away the stuff that we worry about every day. Because remember, on the Camino, all you're doing every single day is getting up and walking another 13 miles, finding a place to sleep, getting something to eat, sleep, get up the next day, do the same thing. It's not more, you can't get much more basic than that. And in that simplified format, you meet people, and who you are and what you've accomplished doesn't really mean anything. It means nothing. It might be a point of interest. Say, well, I'm a stockbroker, or I've been in teaching. It helps with conversation, but it has no meaning. What you have is the person in front of you, and who are we to each other? And that's the fundamental truth about being connected as people. But we don't get to that level. We are so often preoccupied by the stuff that's not in front of us right now, the stuff that happened or about to happen once we get done with our exchange with another person. that we don't spend time on the person. And so the Camino strips right that down. Yeah, that's what the pilgrimage does. It takes it down to the basics. And so it might be you learn about God through this. You might learn about humanity through this. You learn about yourself through this. But all this is what helps bind us together. And when you do it with someone who is Japanese, I remember having a discussion with a young Japanese woman who is trying to sort out what Christianity is all about, which, you know, for me as a pastor, a Christian pastor, it's like cha-ching. Oh my gosh, this is beautiful. She was raised Japanese, which is an amalgam of different spiritualities, different religions, actually. The Shinto and Christianity and Buddhism all kind of weave together in the Japanese culture. And she was trying to figure out, you know, why was Christianity, what is it about Christianity that is unique? And she concluded at this point that in her culture, the ancestors are really to be respected and revered. The ancestors were revered and the gods, small g, were respected. And what she found out Christianity is that God is revered and our ancestors are respected. And that little switch, that little flip there, she was revealing something about her own soul searching. And I was able to share a little bit about, you know, my experience. And, you know, it was over supper one night. I never saw her again. I never will, probably. But that memory lives. I'm connected to her. She's connected to me. And you have encounter after encounter after encounter like that throughout the entire time you're there. Moments that are truly, well, not only uplifting, but upbuilding as well. I think that's emblematic of the human experience.
Well, Tom, I don't see any further questions. Does anybody have anything? I just want to thank you again for, I've read about this before. I know bits and pieces, but it was just nice to have a voice to take us on the whole journey.
Yeah.
We're going to close with a closing prayer by Natalie.
I think Sven has something.
Oh, I'm sorry, Natalie. Sorry, go ahead, Sven.
In April, we're doing a Camino, the Camino Portuguese, and it's Judy and Nancy's first time. So, Tom, what advice do you have for people about to embark on their first Camino?
I think it takes seriously the what you're going to carry with you, and train for it a little bit. Get used to the idea of walking some distances. But you know, you can adjust it. You can go 5 miles if you want in a day. You can go 20 miles if you want in a day. There's no set pace. There's no set distance. But don't be intimidated by the distance. And that's what intimidated me. All that scary picture of me in the airport. I was scared stiff. I didn't know if I could do this sort of thing. But you realize you're going to move as far as you can move, and then you're going to stop. And trust that your body will adjust, and you'll be able to not only begin to enjoy the walk, but also begin to enjoy the people you're with. So don't be intimidated by the enormity of it. And it sounds like, Sven, you're actually are you doing the entire Portuguese Camino, or are you doing a section of it?
Our plan is to go from Porto to Santiago,
okay.
And then, and we're doing it via bicycle. So my two Caminos, I did the Camino de Levante via bicycle, and I did the Camino there on foot. And so we're the holy rollers. So we bike. We'll do, you know, but it's still the weight is important, because you don't want to have 40 pounds on the back of your bike.
Exactly.
You know, and just beyond the physical, keeping up with all that stuff spiritually then takes you away from being present to where you are on the journey. So it trades off some things there. But thank you for your advice and for your time today.
Yeah, they one of the wisdom pieces of the Appalachian Trail is you hike your own hike. That applies to the Camino, and that certainly applies to the cycling part as well. Don't try to keep up with other people who are faster than you. It's not a competition.
Right.
You spend, by the way, you spend most of your time on the Camino walking by yourself. Most everybody walks by themselves for a huge amount of time, and you walk at your own pace, and you rest when you want to rest. There are no rules. Just go with the flow. So solitude is something that will be characteristic of the experience, and I would think on cycling as well, that some people are going to finish faster than others, and that's perfectly all right.
I have one last question, Tom.
Sure.
Would you do it again, and does your wife have any interest in doing it or portion of it?
No, she does not have interest. And yes, she would let me go again.
But do you want to go again?
Yeah, I kind of would. I would kind of like to do it. I'm not sure if I would do it in Spain. I found that the language barrier was awkward for me. I've got a 10-year, folks. I cannot pick up foreign words and pronunciations very well. And so I sort of learned to, say the key words and then use a lot of sign language, and apologize for not knowing the language. But I wonder what it would be like to do a pilgrimage, say, in England, and they have them there. There are pilgrimage routes in England, and so I'm kind of looking at that to see what it'd be like to do a long walk in a place where I might be able to better keep up with what's being said. Although I'm told that some of the English accents are kind of hard to fathom, but at least there's a shot at the same language. Yeah, but when I got to the end, I thought, I could do this again.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Thinking about your preference for language, would you consider the Appalachian Trail, which
yeah,
surely
yeah,
wouldn't have no trouble?
yeah,
Not much trouble.
Yeah. I've done sections of it, and if you're comparing and contrasting, the Appalachian Trail is a much more challenging hike than the Camino. The Camino de Santiago it started out with mountains, and you sort of about 3/4 of the way through, you go over some mountains again. But most of the time, it's just kind of rolling hills, and some areas, the Meseta, which is it's like the Great Plains of America, the large swath of land that's fairly level, big sky, and you just walk and walk and walk.
Well, last pass. This has been terrific. Tom, I really appreciate your slide presentation. I think that made it really, I'm very visual, so that's very helpful for me.
Thank you, yeah.
And I'm going to ask now if Natalie will close us in prayer. Before I do, I'll make a quick announcement. January 8th is our next gathering, and Mary Higby from California, who started a school in South Sudan, and one of our parishioners, Suzanne Hicks, will be our speakers. So I'll send you more information about those folks, but that will be the next Saturday we get together.
And Terry, may I say something?
Yes, Tom.
I just really am impressed with what you all are doing with this group. That you are devoted to exploring the spiritual side of human experience. And I just commend you for doing this.
Well, thank you. It's been very gratifying.
Well, yeah, I think spirituality has become very important for me in the last few years. I sort of didn't focus on it a whole lot earlier on, but it's become something much more important. And it's so gratifying to plug into a group of folks who are, thinking about these things and trying to express and put words to it. So thank you for doing this.
Okay, and just a shout out to everyone that's here. Share this information with your friends who are interested, because that's our whole goal. And if we can't meet together, let's take advantage of the fact that we have a Zoom. We can talk to you from California, New York, Texas, wherever you are, and you can participate. Because that was our primary goal at the beginning, and it seems to be working. Well, peace be with you, and let us pray. Natalie?
Okay, I have been working on this prayer kind of throughout your entire presentation, but you know what? It just got longer and longer. So let me just say, let us pray. Oh, dear Lord, thank you for providing this medium to us so that Tom could share his experiences with us, so that we could, in a community, build on our spirituality and just have this time together. We thank you for providing us with questions to ask Tom so that we could get more, get more in depth about his experience, and just say, be with us during our travels, and y'all come again. In your son's name, we give thanks and praise. Amen.
Amen.
Well, I won't see anybody till the new year, so Merry Christmas to all. Let's look for a joyful and refreshing new year and come together again on January the 8th.
Okay.
Thanks.